In the modern automotive world, especially on YouTube and social media, big car stories no longer stay inside garages or factories. They become public discussions where creators, engineers, and companies all share their opinions, sometimes agreeing and sometimes strongly disagreeing. One of the most talked about situations in recent times is the ongoing story involving Mate Armstrong, a well-known car rebuild creator, the Bugatti Chiron crash rebuild, and comments made by Bugatti's leadership through CEO Mate Rimac. This situation became even more intense when responses from Mate Armstrong and FXAlexG, the car owner and influencer connected to the project, started circulating online. At the center of everything is not just a damaged hypercar, but a bigger debate about safety, responsibility, engineering control, and whether independent builders can properly repair extremely advanced machines like a Bugatti Chiron without direct factory support. The situation became popular because it mixes emotion, engineering, pride, and public accountability all at the same time. On one side, Bugatti, a company known for making some of the most advanced and expensive cars in the world, is focused on safety standards, technical precision, and protecting its brand reputation. On the other side, Mate Armstrong represents the growing community of independent builders who take damaged supercars and try to bring them back to life using skill, creativity, and available parts, even when official manufacturers refuse to help. FXAlexG adds another layer. As a car owner who is emotionally and financially invested in getting the Chiron back on the road after a serious crash. When Mate Rimac explained Bugatti's position in a public video, he focused heavily on safety concerns, explaining that hypercars like the Chiron are not simple machines but extremely complex systems built with precision engineering, where every part is designed, tested, and calibrated to work together perfectly. He emphasized that producing or replacing parts for such a limited production vehicle is extremely expensive and requires strict control. This message was meant to explain why official parts and factory support are not easily available and why safety must always come first. However, this explanation quickly sparked debate online because many viewers and creators interpreted it in different ways. Some saw it as a responsible manufacturer protecting lives and standards, while others saw it as a barrier that makes repairs nearly impossible for independent builders. After this, Mate Armstrong responded in a calm and respectful way, saying that he understands and respects Bugatti's engineering excellence and the difficulty of building such a car. At the same time, he made it clear that he had already accepted the challenge of rebuilding the vehicle and would do his best using the resources available to him, even if the final result would not be factory perfect. This is an important point because it shows the gap between factory-level manufacturing and real-world repair work. Mate did not claim to match Bugatti's original production standards, but instead focused on making the car safe, functional, and roadworthy again. He also mentioned that without official factory support or parts, achieving original specifications would not be possible, which is a realistic statement in the world of high-performance engineering. Still, he expressed determination to complete the project responsibly. This combination of respect and confidence is one reason why his response gained strong attention online. It created a clear narrative, a skilled independent builder taking on one of the most complex repair challenges in the automotive world, while acknowledging the limits of what he can achieve without manufacturer involvement. This set the stage for a much larger discussion that goes beyond just one car, touching on the future of car repairs, ownership rights, and whether companies should or should not support independent repairs of their most advanced vehicles. As the discussion continued, FXAlexG also entered the conversation with a detailed response that added more fuel to the already growing debate. FXAlexG's position was strongly supportive of the rebuild project and of Mate Armstrong's ability to handle it. He agreed with the importance of safety and acknowledged that modern hypercars rely on advanced systems such as airbags, seat belts, sensors, and structural engineering designed to protect occupants in extreme conditions. He also recognized that in the original crash, these systems worked as intended and likely saved lives, which is why they exist in the first place. However, FXAlexG challenged the idea that refusing to supply official parts automatically increases safety. His argument was based on the belief that if manufacturers do not provide components, independent builders will still attempt repairs using third-party or alternative solutions. In his view, this could lead to even more unpredictable results because the repair process would still happen, but without any official guidance or support. This argument created a direct contrast with Bugatti's position, which was focused on controlling repairs to ensure maximum safety and engineering integrity. FXG's response also introduced the idea that some replacement parts, such as airbags or electronic modules, may actually share compatibility across different vehicles within large automotive groups. For example, he suggested that certain components might come from widely used platforms across brands under the same corporate umbrella, meaning they are not as unique as some might assume. This claim sparked even more discussion, because it raises questions about how exclusive hypercar components really are and whether they can be sourced outside the official manufacturer network. At the same time, FXG revealed that there had been previous communication where it was allegedly implied that Bugatti or its representatives would assist in some way, either through part supply or technical guidance. According to his version of events, there was an expectation of cooperation at one stage, but later this position changed, leading to frustration and confusion. This shift became a major talking point in the online discussion because it suggested inconsistency between private communication and public statements. However, it is important to note that these claims exist within a broader debate and are interpreted differently depending on perspective. Supporters of Bugatti argue that manufacturers must be extremely careful with promises involving safety-critical components, especially when vehicles are rebuilt outside official facilities. On the other hand, supporters of the rebuild project believe that once a salvage vehicle is released into market, owners should have the freedom to repair it as they choose, as long as safety standards are maintained. FXG's strong stance, combined with Matt Armstrong's practical approach to rebuilding, created a narrative where independent engineering meets corporate policy, and neither side is fully willing to back down. This tension is what made the story spread so widely across automotive communities. It is not just about a crash car anymore. It is about control, responsibility, trust, and the future of how high-end vehicles can be repaired outside official systems. The discussion continues to grow because there is no simple answer, and both sides present arguments that make sense depending on how you view safety, ownership rights, and engineering authority. As the situation developed further, the conversation around the Bugatti Chiron rebuild began to shift from simple reactions into a much deeper argument about responsibility, engineering limits, and trust between manufacturers and independent builders. What made this case stand out was not only the damage to a very expensive hypercar, but also the fact that so many different voices were now involved in shaping the story. On one side, Bugatti's leadership maintained that safety must remain the highest priority, especially when dealing with vehicles that operate at extreme speeds and depend on highly precise engineering systems. Their position was that every component in a car like the Chiron is part of a carefully balanced system, and even small changes or unofficial replacements could affect performance or safety in unpredictable ways. From this point of view, limiting access to official parts is not about control or restriction, but about preventing risks that could arise from unverified repairs. On the other side, Matt Armstrong and FXG represented a more practical and hands-on approach, where the focus is on restoring a functional vehicle using available knowledge, skills, and alternative sourcing methods. Matt's response showed a careful balance between respect for Bugatti's engineering and confidence in his own ability to rebuild the car safely. He made it clear that while the final result might not match factory specifications exactly, the goal was to create a roadworthy and safe vehicle using the best possible methods available outside of a factory environment. This is where the disagreement becomes more philosophical than technical. For manufacturers like Bugatti, safe means strictly following original engineering design, approved parts, and controlled assembly processes. For independent builders, safe often means achieving real-world functionality and reliability through practical repair solutions, even if those solutions differ from factory standards. This difference in definition is at the core of the entire debate. FXG's involvement added another layer of complexity because he openly supported the rebuild and questioned whether restricting parts actually improves safety in real-world scenarios. He suggested that if official parts are not available, builders will still attempt repairs using third-party or cross-compatible components, which may not be controlled or tested by the manufacturer. This raises an important concern. Does restricting access to parts actually prevent unsafe repairs, or does it push people toward less controlled alternatives? This question does not have a simple answer, and both sides present valid concerns. Manufacturers worry about liability, brand reputation, and the possibility of accidents involving modified or incorrectly repaired vehicles. Independent builders argue that ownership should include the right to repair, especially when vehicles are legally salvaged and intended for rebuild. The Chiron situation became a symbol of this wider conflict, showing how modern automotive engineering is not just about building fast cars, but also about controlling how those cars are repaired and maintained once they leave the factory. As discussions continued online, viewers began to take sides, with some praising Bugatti for maintaining strict safety standards and others supporting Mate and FXG for pushing forward with an ambitious rebuild despite obstacles. This growing divide helped fuel the popularity of the story, turning it into one of the most discussed automotive topics in recent memory. Another important aspect of this entire situation is the role of communication, expectations, and how public statements can sometimes differ from private discussions. According to FXG's version of events, there were earlier conversations where it was suggested that Bugatti or its representatives might provide some level of cooperation during the rebuild process. This included possible access to parts and even technical oversight to ensure that the rebuilt vehicle would meet certain safety standards. However, FXG later stated that this expectation changed, and the support that was initially implied did not continue in the same way. This created frustration and confusion, especially because rebuilding a hypercar like the Chiron without factory support is already an extremely difficult challenge. When expectations are unclear or change over time, it can lead to misunderstandings and public disagreements, especially when the situation is being followed by a large online audience. From Bugatti's perspective, however, such projects involve serious considerations that go beyond informal agreements or discussions. The company must ensure that any involvement in external rebuilds does not compromise legal responsibility, engineering integrity, or brand protection. High-performance vehicles like the Chiron are not just cars. They represent the highest level of automotive engineering, where every part is designed to work within extremely tight tolerances. Even small deviations can have significant consequences at high speeds. Because of this, manufacturers are often very cautious when it comes to supporting repairs outside official service networks. At the same time, the rise of independent automotive creators has changed the way people view car ownership and repair culture. In the past, complex repairs were almost entirely controlled by manufacturers and authorized workshops. Today, however, platforms like YouTube have created a new generation of skilled builders who document full rebuilds of damaged vehicles in public view. This transparency has created both admiration and controversy. Supporters argue that it promotes learning, innovation, and accessibility in automotive repair, while critics argue that it may encourage unsafe experimentation on highly complex machines. The Chiron rebuild sits directly in the middle of this debate, acting as a real-world example of what happens when independent ambition meets manufacturer control. FXG's strong statements about continuing to rebuild regardless of official support highlight a growing belief in the right to repair philosophy, where owners and builders feel they should have full control over how a vehicle is restored, as long as safety is not compromised. However, defining what's safe truly remains the biggest challenge. Without factory validation, independent builders must rely on experience, available data, and component sourcing knowledge to ensure reliability. This creates a gray area where confidence, skill, and risk all intersect. As the story continues to spread, it becomes less about one car and more about a larger question facing the automotive world. Who ultimately has control of the life of a machine once it is sold? The manufacturer who designed it or the owner who pays for it? As the rebuild story moved forward, the discussion shifted into one of the most controversial and technically interesting parts of the entire situation: how the damaged Bugatti Chiron would actually be rebuilt without full factory support. This is where the difference between theory and real-world engineering becomes very clear. A hypercar like the Chiron is not just a fast car with expensive parts. It is a highly integrated system where electronics, safety systems, aerodynamics, and structural components all work together as one carefully tuned machine. When a car like this is severely damaged, repairing it is not just about replacing broken panels or fitting new parts. It requires deep understanding of how each system communicates with the others. In the case of Mate Armstrong's rebuild, the challenge becomes even more complex because official Bugatti parts and technical guidance are limited or unavailable. This forces a team to explore alternative sourcing methods, third-party suppliers, and cross-compatible components from other vehicles within larger automotive groups. One of the most discussed topics in this part of the story is the idea that some safety-related components, such as airbags or electronic modules, might share similarities across different models within the same parent company ecosystem. This claim sparked debate because, if true, it could mean that certain critical parts are not as exclusive or uniquely engineered as people might assume. However, even if components share part numbers, integration into a specific vehicle is still a highly precise process. Airbags, for example, are not just physical devices. They are part of a larger safety network that includes crash sensors, control units, and deployment timing systems. Even small differences in calibration can change how they behave in a real accident. This is why manufacturers like Bugatti emphasize strict control over repairs and replacements, especially for safety-critical systems. From their point of view, allowing unofficial or partially compatible parts could introduce risks that are difficult to predict or test outside controlled environments. On the other hand, independent builders like Mate and FXG approach the situation with a more adaptive mindset. Their argument is that if a vehicle is already classified as salvage and no longer in factory condition, the goal should be to restore it to a safe, functional state using the best available resources. This includes sourcing compatible parts, fabricating missing components, and working with specialists who understand high-performance automotive systems. The key difference lies in definition. Manufacturers define safety through original engineering standards, while rebuilders define safety through practical roadworthiness and real-world performance. This difference is what makes the Chiron rebuild so controversial and widely discussed. It is not simply a technical project. It is a test case for how far independent engineering can go when official support is removed. Every decision in the rebuild process carries both technical and ethical weight, because it affects not only the performance of the car, but also the broader debate about repair rights and manufacturer control. As the project continues, it becomes clear that the outcome will be closely watched by both automotive enthusiasts and industry professionals, because it could influence how future high-end vehicle repairs are approached outside official networks. Another major layer of complexity in this situation comes from the tension between public perception and corporate responsibility. When a company like Bugatti speaks publicly about safety concerns, it is not only addressing one specific rebuild project, but also protecting its entire brand reputation and legal responsibility across all markets. Hypercars operate at performance levels that leave very little margin for error, and even minor mistakes in repair or assembly can lead to serious consequences. Because of this, manufacturers tend to take a very cautious stance when it comes to external modifications or independent rebuilds. From their perspective, providing official parts or technical support to unofficial repair projects could potentially create liability risks if something goes wrong later. This is why companies often prefer to keep repairs within authorized service networks, where procedures are strictly controlled and documented. However, in the modern digital era, this approach often conflicts with the growing culture of transparency and independent content creation. YouTube builders like Matt Armstrong have built large audiences by documenting full rebuild processes in detail, showing every step from damaged wrecks to finished vehicles. This transparency creates a strong connection with viewers, who appreciate seeing real engineering challenges being solved in practical ways. It also raises expectations about accessibility, with many viewers believing that if a car could be repaired, it should be reparable by skilled individuals outside factory systems. FXG's involvement in this case adds emotional weight to this perspective because he is not just an observer, but the owner of the vehicle, financially and personally invested in its restoration. His determination to proceed with the rebuild, even without full manufacturer support, reflects a broader shift in how people view ownership rights in the automotive world. The idea that owning a vehicle should include full control over its repair and restoration is becoming increasingly popular, especially among enthusiasts who value hands-on engineering culture. However, this belief still clashes with the reality of modern automotive complexity, where vehicles are no longer simple mechanical systems, but highly integrated electronic platforms. The Chiron, in particular, represents one of the highest levels of this complexity, combining extreme speed with advanced safety systems that rely on precise calibration. This creates a situation where both sides of the argument have valid points. Independent builders emphasize creativity, accessibility, and the right to repair, while manufacturers emphasize safety, consistency, and engineering control. The result is a growing debate that extends far beyond a single car and touches on the future of automotive repair culture as a whole. As the rebuild continued to gain attention online, the conversation started shifting from technical arguments into something more symbolic, where the Bugatti Chiron itself became a representation of a much larger conflict in the automotive world. On one side, there is a traditional structure of high-end manufacturers who design, test, and control every aspect of their vehicles from production to authorized repair. On the other side, there is a growing community of independent creators and engineers who believe that once a vehicle is sold, the owner should have the freedom to repair, modify, and rebuild it using whatever legal means they choose. This tension is not new, but the Chiron situation amplified it because it involves one of the most advanced and expensive cars ever built, making every decision in the rebuild process more visible and more controversial. The involvement of Mate Armstrong and FXG brought a human element into the discussion because they are not corporate representatives, but individuals directly working with the damaged vehicle. Their approach is based on problem solving in real time, using available tools, knowledge, and resources to overcome challenges that are not always addressed in official manuals or factory environments. At the same time, Bugatti's position reflects a responsibility not just to one vehicle, but to the entire ecosystem of hypercar ownership, where safety failures or improper repairs could have serious consequences at extreme speeds. This creates a natural conflict in priorities. For the rebuild team, the priority is to bring a valuable and emotionally significant vehicle back to life. For the manufacturer, the priority is to ensure that any version of that vehicle on the road meets strict engineering and safety standards. FXG's strong public statements added urgency to the situation because they suggested that the rebuild would continue regardless of official support, which raised questions about how independent such a project can truly be when dealing with such advanced machinery. Meanwhile, Matt's careful and respectful tone helped maintain a sense of balance, as he consistently acknowledged the limitations of working without factory parts, while still expressing determination to complete the project safely. This combination of ambition and caution is what makes the rebuild so closely followed by viewers around the world. It is not just about whether the car will run again, but about how far independent engineering can realistically go when it is separated from manufacturer control. The debate continues to grow because both sides are operating from valid but different assumptions about safety, responsibility, and ownership. As more updates